All right. So Natasha will be here in just a minute, and then we will get started.
All right.
Hey there.
Hey. Okay. Yeah. I had to make sure I was in focus and all that. Gosh, the light. Okay, but I'm here. Yeah, I'm very excited about today's topic, especially because it's such a trigger subject, especially for me. And that being said, I do want to be honest about my journey because I don't think anything about this topic or journey is pretty or sounds beautiful or, I mean, just like, so yeah, but I'm excited. And I know you have a lot prepared as well.
Me too. Yeah, I'm excited too. And like you said, it this topic is also um important to me on a personal level as well, because I have also survived sexual trauma. So we're not just talking out of our butts. We can speak from personal experience as well as just studying this topic. And yeah. I just realized I forgot to brush my teeth, and I'm like, oh darn. So I was hoping that we would have some people already, but hopefully we'll get some people. Um, so I guess if you're okay with it, I wanted to start with talking about gemstones, because a lot of us love gems and use gems, and they can be used for shadow work. So I have a few listed. There are more than these, obviously, but I picked a few um, that really touch a lot of different areas that can help empower shadow work, especially when it comes to sexual trauma.
Okay.
Um, so black tourmaline being one of them, it's, as we know, grounding and shielding, and it absorbs negative energy, but it also boosts self-worth and lessens anxiety and soothes intense emotional states. And it can also help you process trauma. And another thing that I liked about black tourmaline is that it also can help with self-harm and suicidal thoughts, and as well as substance abuse. So I
Hmm.
felt like, wow, that really hit a lot of the points. So I included that in my notes. I guess before I talk any more about gemstones, do you have any gemstones that you have personally found to be helpful with your shadow work?
So when I was trying to focus specifically on healing that specific trauma in my body, I knew it was predominantly like I had to focus on that area. So I wanted to focus on gemstones that dealt with the sacral chakra for one, and also just gemstones that would just ultimately help balance me out. So for me, those gemstones were like carnelian, rose quartz, um, tiger's eye, um, and that's the only three I could think of on the top of my head. But that's the intention I would have, is that I would try to balance that specific area or try to activate it with the intention of empowerment, then trying to
Right,
because I think for me, I noticed that there was a lot of um I definitely tackled this specific trauma in layers, but in terms of gemstone, yeah, I definitely loved using gemstones, whether it was to physically use them as a meditate for release, or whether I was just holding them as I was sleeping, or just trying to, just try to be in the frequency. I definitely loved to use gemstones when, for the days especially, I was just maybe too physically exhausted or emotionally exhausted, where gemstones was a way of doing something with effort without necessarily like going too tired, with the practice. Because sometimes in this journey, I found that when I was healing through the specific trauma, I definitely like my energy would fluctuate. Like I could go all in one day, and then the next day I would be like so exhausted from going all in. I'm like, I need a break. So, um,
Right. I'm same way. And that's one thing I love about gemstones is that they're so easy to use. And like you mentioned, they're great on the days, especially when you just don't have the energy to maybe do a whole ritual or something else that's going to require more energy. Um, and there's so many different ways you can use them. You can use them in witch bottles and little sachets. I sleep with a particular pouch of mine under my pillow. Um, but let's see real quick. Oh, yay, hello. Thank you for joining. So another gemstone that I decided I wanted to talk about was lapis lazuli. This one enhances your connection to your higher self or your inner wise teacher and allows you to see beyond human sight into divine reason and timing, which can be so helpful when horrible things happen to you because I mean, as we all know, everybody's gone through at least one trauma, and it can be really hard to see the silver lining and to see the divine timing and reason. So this stone is really great with helping with that. It's also really great for helping you release things that you have no control over, which is very helpful for people with trauma history. It shields against negative energy and allows suppressed emotions to flow. While this stone can dig up a lot of intense emotion, it also soothes these emotions and can even reduce anxiety. And then it's also really great with boosting communication, so that way you can communicate your feelings either to your therapist, to your friends or family, and to process them. It also boosts self-awareness. Um, I'm realizing now that like I wrote a lot for each gemstone. So I think I'll just touch on little points instead of reading the whole thing because I don't want to be like the only one talking. I'm so sorry. Um, I also have Howlite on here. Howlite's really great for untwisting your thinking. Like a lot of us, we end up feeling like our thoughts are coiled up on each other and we just can't think straight. So Howlite's really great for untwisting your thoughts. Can help with anxiety, stress. This one helps you, like we were talking about last week. Howlite can really help you trace your issues down to the root of the problem. Um, and obviously, like we talked about last week, that's very important to find the root of the problems. It increases spiritual awareness. It can also help you better connect with your higher self. I also read that I didn't know this about Howlite. I read that it's also a great gemstone for helping with insomnia, which is common for a lot of us with trauma background.
I think
Carnelian, yeah,
Oh, sorry. I think
no, go ahead.
it just sounds like when you're going over through all these gemstones, it sounds like you are making excellent points that with trauma backgrounds, yes, you need to focus on like definitely the area of trauma and the specific energy that may not be physically yours. And then also, yes, it may also be hard to communicate once you do reach past that stage because I definitely remember I definitely fought with that hard. Like even just to be able to vocally say out loud to myself, I extremely struggled. Like I remember it feeling like a frog in my throat. And then other points of like, yes, there's going through the day to day before you reach that healing moment of like, yeah, you have issues sleeping. Maybe like with me, from I didn't have the sleeping problem because I can sleep just like that. Like I was blessed like that. But for me, it was the other way with like food. I was going back and forth between binge eating and practically starving myself. Like it just, I think trauma definitely takes us in different directions. So when I
Mhm.
hear you speaking of these different gemstones, it just reminds me of how one thing that happened to you can truly become different addictions, even, or self sabotage habits when trauma happens. That's what I think of when I think of those gemstones. And I think a lot of our viewers, when they see this, is that they're going to think, well, all these gemstones are great, but how can I use these, like to help me? And we already touched on some keys already. Is like, I think, like for me, what helped me a lot was also intentionally creating crystal grids for me. Like it was a way of not just to set like an energy for like my space for me to empower myself with or heal or whatever. But it was also
Mm,
a way for me to set other intentions for my work, especially shadow work, or even my spiritual practice as a practitioner, a witch. So um, that's what I think of when you say all these gemstones. So I think you're definitely touching on a lot of things, like whether it's releasing work or you trying to heal or balance yourself or just trying to be able to communicate and be able to express yourself as a normal person again. Like, it's
right,
definitely a lot of things that, you know, are not talked about when we go through this trauma. We just,
right.
I
I
think it's
agree.
just so much about victimizing and blaming and all that, and we don't really get to, like this, like coming on the other side as a survivor.
Right. I completely agree. And when you said the whole thing about like having a hard time even, communicating, I'll never forget when I was still in the military, being taken into an interrogation room after what happened to me. And NCIS flat out kept asking me, and and I'm gonna use the R word, just trigger warning, but like they kept asking me flat out, did he rape you? And I was so petrified. I was so scared. I was so angry. I was confused. I had so many intense emotions, and I couldn't bring myself to say like that word. And I couldn't bring myself to say, yes, he did that. I just kept shaking. And communicating to the NCIS agents was just nearly impossible. And it took me like, I want to say 2 hours in that interrogation room before I finally was able to at least nod my head, because and they were like, we need you to say it. And I was like, I can't. Um, so yeah, communication is a huge one. Carnelian I put in here because it helps boost confidence and self-esteem, which can be so damaged by sexual trauma. And it motivates and empowers you. It can also help with anxiety and empower you to live your authentic self, which again is really hard after you've experienced trauma, as you know. It's really hard to be yourself. You feel like you're a completely different person after this stuff happens to you. Um, Iolite I included because it helps you process and cope with memories of trauma while facing them. And I put in here, it's a really good one to bring to therapy with you. Just pop it in your pocket. If you wear a bra, pop it in your bra. Um, I also have rhodochrosite. I always say that one wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong. This one has so much that's helpful. I'm going to just quickly try to just pick out the main points. But it heals the heart chakra, which we know is very damaged by trauma. It helps you, it gives you courage to face your personal trauma. So it can be another great one for therapy to hold on to. Release what no longer serves you. It also enables you to forgive, which I know forgiveness is such a hard topic to talk about when it comes to trauma, because a lot of us believe that forgiveness is like, oh, it's okay that you did that to me. But that's not what it is. It's giving you a key to unlock yourself from the prison that trauma is holding you in. Because if you don't forgive, you're going to continue to obsess about it and ruminate about it, and you're keeping yourself trapped. So this stone enabling you to forgive, it's literally giving you a key to unlock yourself from that prison. I think I'll pause there and see if you have anything, because I think I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more stones.
Okay. So I think you definitely bring some excellent points about, communication. I think like for me, like because I was more of the suppressed person where if I, through the trauma, I just could not like just be even a person. I just would just shut down. So for me, I would suppress so much to even myself, let alone other people. It took time for me to even get to the point to feel things again, let alone to express them. And I had to work my way through that of slowly being able to feel. And I learned very quickly through that experience that I could go from 0 to 100 real quick, or I would find a lot of anger ultimately but underneath that pain. Um, and it took a while. So for me, what helped me through that block, specifically with communication, was yes, gemstones, as well as music, actually, because I got to a point to where if I could at least listen to a song, I could feel it, and then maybe if I listened to it long enough, maybe I could sing that specific song as well, and then maybe live that truth once I got to that stage. And for me, that was very empowering because I just could not allow myself to, again, like, speak about this stuff. And it got to a point to where once I was finally able to speak about it, I couldn't exactly just speak it to anyone, so I was more comfortable writing it. But it came in stages, so um and I think for me as a spiritual person, because I didn't have that safe community, as in like other people, I really leaned heavily on my spirit guides personally. I truly feel like if I was not as intuitive and started my practice so early with them, I really don't feel like I would have got as far. Like honestly, like they got me through so much, and it was really that foundation of slowly being able to feel and process through stages that got me through the journey. Because I think just this topic of sexual trauma is a heavy one, and like I said, it can take us in different directions, for sure.
Definitely. I think because you mentioned writing, that writing was easier for you. That's so common, and for me too. Like I journaled so much when my trauma was fresh. And one thing that I wanted to include today, which I'll jump to this in my notes, is some journal prompts.
Yeah,
I found that looking up shadow work journal prompts was very helpful for me in the beginning when I first learned what shadow work was, and now I can come up with my own prompts. But what painful feelings and thoughts have been generated from my trauma? That's one that you can write about. Another one is, what steps can I take to release my pain, express it, and process it? What comforts, soothes, and calms me? And like we talked about last week, what are my triggers and how do each of them affect me? It's so important to know our triggers. Um, I'll share one more. I put, how do I step out of the role of victim and into the role of survivor? How do
that's a
I,
big one.
yeah, how do I empower myself while taking responsibility for myself? Um, and one thing that I always remind myself when I have bad days is what happened to me was not my fault. I had no control over that, and it was not my responsibility. However, my healing, my recovery, my bounce back from it is my responsibility. And I think that's where so many people get stuck, because they are just in so much pain that they have trouble stepping out of the victim role and into survivor, and they stay in that victim role, and it only further victimizes them. So yeah, those are just a few journal prompts that I wanted to include in there.
That's great. I think I want to talk about a specific exercise about removing the specific energy out of that area from the body that beginners can do, because I feel like that's another aspect that me as a intuitive healer I know about, but I feel like other people don't know about healing the specific type of trauma, is that you do want to remove the energetic like trauma specifically, like, and there is a way to go about it. And the way I went about this is that for the trauma, I wanted to remove that person's energy from out of me, so that way I just never, I felt like a violation. And once I learned that it could be removed, I said, yeah, I want that out. So for me, I wrote a piece of paper of that person's name. I also wrote down the memory and the incident that had happened in full detail, and that took me a while. But once I did, I wanted to make sure I got all the energy, the tears, the words, everything, like, onto that. And then what I did was I put banishing herbs instead of like that letter, I guess. various types that I had at the time. I can't think of what I had at the time, but just the focus intent was banishing. And then I crumpled it away from me as an act of banishing, repelling. And then I threw it in fire as a way of transmuting because like that energy cannot truly be destroyed. It has to shift or transform. That's what we know as
Exactly.
practitioners is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Um, and I sent that to source.
Uh-oh, you
And
still there? Oh, there we go.
so that was very important to me is that I was able to release that specific energy. So that's how I went about it to release that, as well as I know some other people, they like to strengthen that area with like yoni steams as well. I haven't personally experimented with that in my life, but I have seen others benefited from it when they went through their own specific traumas with sexual abuse. So I do know that it works. I just haven't done it personally myself. For me, the banishing ritual was very effective for me, especially once I was ready to release it. Because first you have
Right.
to process it. So
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And going along with what you were saying, you mentioned herbs. I also had a couple herbs and a tree on here. Um, sorry, I just saw one of the comments. So I suggested hawthorn, using hawthorn as a wand to do trauma work because it is a powerful healer of the heart chakra. Um, and it also empowers you to work through your trauma and to release it. So, like you're saying, release. Hawthorn's great for that. Um, let's see. I did have a little note in here that the berries are edible. However, like apple seeds, the seeds have traces of cyanide in them, so don't eat the seeds. But I suggest making a wand out of hawthorn to help you with your trauma work. And Calamus and lemon balm and passionflower are also really great choices. Each of them are really helpful with the heart chakra, with releasing. One of them, lemon balm, is really great for gastrointestinal problems, which a lot of us end up having after trauma. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to in support groups or just in my friend group who have been like, yeah, my
that
stomach
makes
is messed up.
that makes a lot of sense because a physical symptom of of that chakra of that being unbalanced for that for the what you're talking about deals with the solar plexus, which a lot of people with sexual trauma, they feel that they've lost their own willpower and have either gone to their own shame or guilt or fear mentality. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I do see that also as a healer is that the sexual trauma victims, they have a lot of issues with being able to trust themselves making their own decisions and being able to express their own feelings and feel okay to be passionate or sensual with them. Like there's a lot of areas that covers. And then the fear, like it reminds me of all that lower vibrational, like emotional and mental scale that you're on through that
Right.
journey.
And you mentioned, we both have mentioned chakras, and I I really I really think that that all of us, but especially trauma survivors, should be doing at least a little bit of chakra work a day. Just tapping into each of them real quick at least, and checking in on how they're doing because sexual trauma will really wreck your chakras. And from my experience and from my research, the root, the sacral, the heart, and the throat chakras are like most affected by trauma. Um, like for the throat chakra, we oftentimes, like we talked about, we shut down. We get to a point where we can't communicate, or we feel like we don't deserve to use our voice, or that if we talk, we're not going to be heard, or we're not going to be believed, because that is so common, especially in American culture. Um, and so for the throat chakra, I have in my notes that, and this also goes back to you talking about music. Um, Sing, get yourself singing. If you can't talk about your trauma right away, at least try to get yourself singing. Make some noise with your voice, um, because your voice deserves to be heard. And Sorry, I was just reading the comments. But yeah, and then also, use their colors. For example, the sacral chakra, wear orange.
Oh
Use their,
yeah.
yeah, use their mantras or their mudras to help you. Their musical notes as well, so you can get like your singing bowls out if you have any, and work with your chakras that way.
That's a great point. I want to point out is that if you're new with chakra work, there is different, like you said, ways that you can activate that area. And some people like to do it through physical movement, like, like yoga, like a certain position actually engages that area. Some people prefer to do like the what is it, rom vom, like the vocals of that. And there's also specific vocal tones or notes that actually are associated with each chakra, different essential oils, gemstones as well. So there's definitely lots of ways you can go about chakra work. I think the important thing with chakra work is that you are dedicating some amount of time for a specific chakra, and when you feel ready, move on. That's how I always felt about chakra work, is that when you are engaging with one chakra, try to go all in, really try to experience it, try to
Right.
understand it, like for the root chakra, you're allowing it deals with survival, and it's blocked by fear. So maybe when you're doing your own, shadow work journaling, you can, try to explore what fear is for you, and, the specific triggers and stuff that's with that, and then like I think for trauma work, what helped me with the chakra stuff was definitely for most the sacral, the root, and like you said, the throat. Specifically, those three was the most intense. Definitely my willpower was affected, but I always found myself to be a very fiery person. I just didn't do enough of it for myself. So those were definitely the weakest areas for me. And I think the sacral out of all of them was the most intense. And for me to do chakra work with that, I found myself later on, especially now in my practice, it's moved further into physical movement just because I find it gives me the most, I don't know, the best, deepest release, I feel, and
Mhm.
then you can also control it with breath as well as movement and then intention. So, and then you can also, add sound or create sacred space. Like you can really go all in when you create it into a physical practice. So,
I agree. And I think also getting moving is so important because moving your body will also help break up stagnancy in the body. So like yeah, like your energy mimics your physical behavior. Um and I agree. I think dancing is so important. And I didn't know what this was for the longest time until I picked up a book on Taoism, but it was talking about how God, I wish I had it. Um Spontaneous qigong. So like basically I would just randomly, spontaneously start doing these movements and I do it's so hard to explain, but I would do them and I would be pushing and pulling energy and weaving it and
dude, you're
um
freaking me out right now because you're making me wonder if I'm subconsciously doing what you're talking about. Because
yeah, because like
I just always thought that was like intuitive dancing. That's what I call it. But
exactly
what you're talking about sounds like it, and I'm like literally freaking out. Like, am I like, is this like a past life thing? Oh my gosh, y'all
right,
are
like I've said before, I don't have a drop of Asian blood in me, but I swear to you, in a past life I was Asian. I think I was Chinese, and I know in another life I was Japanese, but I've always been pulled to the Chinese methods of like spirituality and yeah, I wish I had bookmarked the page for this talk, but in this book, he talks about spontaneous qigong, and he talked about how oftentimes when people go into these random qigong movements, it's brought on by them processing their trauma. So I was like blown away when I read that page. I'll never forget it. I got goosebumps, and I just sat there for a minute, like, oh
I
my
love
God.
I love that concept of transmuting your trauma, because when
Yeah.
I'm releasing, like, it's very much of that idea of, okay, I'm not a dancer. I never identified as that. And then one day I just felt the need to move my body. So I closed my eyes, I found a song, and I just let my body tell me, like, I literally just let my body tell me how to move. And eventually it just became a practice. And it's been extremely healing for me. And it's been amazing for me to also reconnect with my body, because I feel like once, especially with sexual trauma and rape and all that, I feel like you kind of step back from your body, whether that's, disassociating or body dysmorphia or binge eating. Like it's just your view of yourself is like damaged, as well as the connection you have with yourself, I feel, ultimately, like whatever form that takes.
Right. And something you just said made me think of this. When I went to my acupuncturist for the first time, she didn't like I didn't even have to tell her I had a trauma history. She picked up on that, and she explained to me that acupuncturists and people who practice traditional Chinese medicine see trauma as parts of the body being stuck in time. So it's kind of like the body, different parts of the body are living in different times, and that discrepancy can cause all sorts of issues.
That's amazing you bring that up, because that concept is not that far off from a shamanic belief of trauma, that they believe in soul loss, like having a soul retrieval, that if you experience any form of trauma, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, whatever, that a person can, like, a soul can fragment and break off and flee as a means of like saving itself or like escaping that trauma. So
Right,
that's what that makes me think of when you speak of that, that this must be a universal belief that's, expressed in in different ways. But that's amazing, that belief that when you experience trauma, a part of your essence is
hmm,
within that trauma, like imprinted. But I
right,
definitely think that also, with the point I said, is that you can regain that back with an
right,
experienced energy healer practitioner. There's different kinds and types, especially, but yeah, I don't think this is just for any intuitive to do for certain. This type of
right,
work is about leaving your body, going to that timeline, bringing it back. Like, there's so much work involved. It's not no,
right.
yeah.
So, like, I also practice save, which is like a Norwegian form of shamanism, basically put. And there, that has helped me so much because there were definitely parts of my soul that had drifted very far away. And I did a soul retrieval on myself a couple of years ago, and it was very powerful. And I definitely felt that I was more solid than I had been before. I felt like I could feel that I was in a million different places at once, and it was driving me crazy. Um, Sorry, I'm reading the comments real quick. Yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, after the soul retrieval, I felt a lot more whole. But yeah, I thought that was so cool, and also just blew my mind when my acupuncturist was like, "Yeah, it's because parts of your body are stuck in different times." And I was like, "What the heck?" And she was like, "Yeah, you're a time traveler, but you're stuck."
I think that
Um,
something else we should also bring up is that with that concept of being fragmented, there may be a lot of us that do need to touch up with their own inner child healing and knowing what that means. Because I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they may think, "Oh gosh, well, does that mean blah blah blah?" X age of me is somewhere else, may possibly be, and then they have to learn. Okay, even if they do magically get that part of themselves back, what happens in the aftermath? Because I've had a soul retrieval um from another practitioner, um, and when I had my inner child back with me, I had to learn how to reconnect with her.
mhm.
And that was hard, because I realized when I lost her so long ago, I lived most of my life without her, my inner child, and I had to learn how to basically honor her every day. I feel like that's what inner child healing was for me is learning how to honor her in some way every day, whether it was watching a movie or doing an activity or wearing an outfit or like just finding some way to allow her to be present and alive because she wasn't allowed to express herself then. And, so I had to
Exactly.
somehow merge her along with this. So with everything I do, I always acknowledge her as well. With every, like when it comes to like my actual like life decisions, so I think that's something that's hard for people to talk about. Is like we have to
Yeah.
get into this inner child healing. If you're like me in my journey, because for me, a lot of my trauma happened in my earlier years with actual rape and also molestation from several babysitters. So.
I'm the same way because, as you know, a lot of my trauma was family based and started very young. My home was not safe, and so I think I talked about last week. One of the meditations that I like to do with myself every now and then is where I actually visualize myself going back into my childhood home, into my room, and finding myself, my child self, in the closet and pulling. So I'm transgender. I say her when I talk about my child self, but I go in and I get her out of the closet and I pull her into my arms and I tell her all the things that I needed to hear back then, and then I get her the fuck out of the house. Sorry for my words, but I get her out of there, and that's just one of the ways that I incorporate working with my younger self, and I agree. I think that's so powerful. Going back and protecting them and comforting them and soothing them.
That's a
Um,
big one.
yeah,
I
giving them what they didn't get before.
I think I did a similar meditation, but instead it was like the aftermath of like the actual incident. And I basically went to myself as my current self and I basically said, "Hey, come with me. I if you come with me, we can find a way to live together, and like basically I'm just saying, "Hey, I found a moment in time where we could be together and you can live like don't stay stuck here, come with me." And for me, that was very powerful because I felt like even though energetically and emotionally I was healing, I felt like mentally I was stuck and I had to do that specific meditation to allow the obsession to leave. And I think it was because subconsciously I knew a part of me was also there. So I did a
Right,
similar meditation, that aspect, except for me, it was like that specific feel.
right. That's awesome. It's so good to hear other people doing that because it's so important. I want to pop back over to gemstones real quick, but I'm not going to go into depth. I just want to mention them at least. I never say this one right, but lepidolite, that's another great one. Black obsidian's a great one. Pink calcite and also orange calcite. And then rose quartz. Rose quartz, I think we all know that one's so good for self-love and compassion, and that's so important for trauma survivors is to be loving and compassionate to yourself because it's very common, I think, when we've been sexually assaulted in any way, shape, or form. Um, we get to this point where we feel like we can't love ourselves or that we're unlovable, and we can become very, very hateful even towards ourselves. So that's why I put rose quartz on there. I really think that giving yourself some love and some compassion is so vital, and it's hard.
I
So
think it's especially hard if you never seen a healthy or loving relationship with anyone, like actually with themselves, let alone actually like being together. Because that was my
right.
experience, is that I knew I had to be better for me, but I didn't even knew what that looked like. And I
Hmm.
had to really shape that for myself. And it took a lot of honesty, which sucked. And then I also had to allow myself to again like experience this and feel it but not drown. So there was a lot of checking in on myself, trying to balance, because I found that with trauma, I was very angry at myself. Like I hated myself, but I also realized I was conditioned to hate myself as well. And I feel like when you're learning self-compassion, when you go through the triggers and the layers, you might find that you may have, found the same way. You may have been conditioned to hate yourself, and you have to find, well, how do I go from there? And I think the
Right.
biggest thing from that is like you have to find it's sort of like reprogramming your mind. You have to first set aside what resonates and what doesn't. It's like, okay, even though this belief is in my head, I know it's not to be true. And for me, one of those thoughts was I was ugly. Like I knew I wasn't like butt ugly. So I was like, okay, I'm not butt ugly, so I'm not ugly. So this thought does not resonate with me. I know I need to work on this because this is a belief in my head, but I know it ain't to be true. So that was one of the thoughts I knew I could isolate and try to remove and then replace. So that's how I try
Right.
to went with those thoughts. And slowly I progressed that to self-care actions. Like, I had to really go about it in stages because everything is so overwhelming with trauma. You really have to
Right.
go slow.
And I think that's a very important thing for all of us to hear is that it goes in stages. And you have to build upon what, where you're at. And you know, the damage from trauma didn't all happen at once. So our healing is not going to be all at once. And I think that's important to remember because so many of us get hard on ourselves and are like, oh my God, I'm still here. Well, it takes time and that's okay. And honestly, healing is a lifelong process. And even lessons that you've already learned, you will learn them on a deeper level as you come up, not against it, but as it comes up again in your life. Um, One thing that really helped me, but was really hard at first, it sucked so bad. It was so awkward and it was so cringy, but it was so powerful for me once I actually committed myself to it. Was daily affirmations, and I would do them in the mirror while
Me
looking at
too.
myself.
Me too. I had to do it
Oh,
that way too.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But it's so helpful. And I have a couple written down here that helped me, so I wanted to share them. One is what happened to me was not my fault, because so many of us are conditioned to believe that, yeah, it was my fault. In society, with not believing people, it's like, well, you must have done something to have invited it. So reminding myself and looking at myself in the mirror and saying, what happened to me was not my fault. After it being cringy, like after weeks of doing it on the daily, I started saying it like very confidently and I started feeling really good because I was standing up for myself. Another was I have control over where my life goes from here. Because when we are sexually assaulted in any way, we feel like we have no more control because control was taken from us. It was ripped from us so unfairly and so in such a just awful and disgusting way. So reminding yourself that you have control now, that you have control over where your life is going to go from now is important. Um, and as we were talking about earlier, from going from victim to survivor, I was a victim and now I step into survivor, or however you want to word that. Um, I am valid, worthy, and enough. And then another is healing from my trauma is possible and will happen gradually as I work my process. So just like what you were saying, it comes in steps, it comes in stages. So yeah, those are some affirmations I wanted to share.
Yeah, I I also felt compelled to speak affirmations because in the mirror, at the time I didn't know why, but looking back, I definitely feel like it's because subconsciously you know that it's like a way of like declaring yourself. You know what I mean? As well
Right.
as you are reprogramming your mindset ultimately. And for me, my affirmations was more so of like, I am worthy, I am enough, I am loved, and I deserve love. Um, and
That's
then
a big one right there. I deserve love.
I
Yeah.
deserve love and I am love. And then also just the fact of you, just the fact of I am safe was a hard one because I had to create that for myself. sometimes it genuinely could not be at home, you know, sometimes it could not be. So I would try to make other means. And I also like for me, when I couldn't go to a friend's house or something, for me, my safe place was the beach. So it was also like my sacred space of where I could literally just ground. It's like the second my feet touch the toes, I like every bit of trauma could literally leave me, like from my body, my mind, soul, and I was like, this is so amazing. Like nowhere on earth could do this besides a beach. And I would just stay there and allow myself to. It's as if I poured all my trauma into the sand, which is what I was doing, which I didn't know at the time. I was basically grounding and transmuting my trauma into the sand, which you can definitely do, you guys. You guys can take grounding the technique or earthing as the technique and use, instead of like releasing your basic negative low vibrational energies, you can focus it specifically with the intention of your trauma and allow your exhaling to be when you are releasing that into the earth, because that was extremely powerful for me to be doing that on a regular basis and to feel safe, because I had to release and also be present to feel safe. And for me, that was
Exactly.
the beach.
Thank you for talking about that. For me, like I love the ocean, but one of the places I go when I really need to cry and I can't cry is the woods. I literally feel the trees pulling my my ick from me. And I know it sounds nuts, but like well, it doesn't probably doesn't sound nuts to you, but probably sounds nuts to most people.
We're
But
witches.
like but like I can communicate with trees. I can communicate with gemstones and plants and things like that. But it was like the trees could hear me, could hear my psychic conversation, and it was like they were reaching into my heart and saying, "Let me take this from you. Let me take this and put it into the earth where it can be grounded. It can be transformed into something else because this energy does not belong in your body." And so yeah, I go to the beach or I go to the woods a lot when I feel like I'm just so overwhelmed and I need to let go. Um, trees for whatever reason, me and trees.
I know what you
Um,
mean. Yeah, I feel like trees could definitely withstand a lot as well, energetically wise. And plus, now that I've explored my plant empathic abilities older, I now know that trees, they're almost like they know all the secrets. You know what I mean? Like they're
they're so
amazing to work
wise.
with. And especially with energy work, and they could be very powerful, especially with your trauma work. So that's a great point you make. You know, whether that's by blending your aura through visualization of releasing, or trying to sync or match vibration with the tree, or trying to release your energy into the tree, is how I found to work with, you know, that specific way, you know, with trauma work. But yeah, I love trees. I think for me, it's more so of oak trees. I don't know if it's because they're just mostly around me, or those are the ones that keep calling out to me. But
That's so interesting too, because the tree that helped me the most when I was little, when a lot of my trauma was still happening, was this white birch tree that we had in our front yard. And I would literally go out there. It sounds so silly, but I would go out there and have picnics with this tree, and I would hug the tree, and I would tell the tree things that I couldn't tell another human being. Um, so yeah. Yeah, I'm literally a tree hugger. Um, I'm not sure. Okay, it's 1:48. Did you need to pop out
no,
early?
no, I'm still good. I
Okay,
think
sweet.
I'm trying to think. Oh, okay. I have another technique I want to share for this trauma work, because I want to think of as many techniques that people can take with them on this. You know what I mean? I think a great way, of course, that when you're dealing with trauma work is, you know, energetic cleansing. You know, it's something I want to bring up that if you're a beginner, you may not know how. So just want to quickly hash those out for you guys. Is, you know, I think especially with sexual trauma, is when you're dealing with like any form of cleansing with water is the most powerful, because that is the water chakra, the sacral, that most of the sexual trauma is located at. So I think that, you know, uh, a spiritual bath, whether that be an actual bath or a shower, can be very effective. If you can't do that means, then you can also make or use your own holy water or full moon water or sun water and put it like on maybe your chakra points with your own affirmations that you want to do for those for empowerment, or by actually trying to cleanse yourself. Some people like to really use incense. I prefer that if I'm using incense, that I'm using the sticks or like my own mixture, because you can get very intentful with that. As well as sound healing. I found that to be very effective with trauma work, because you want to move the stagnant energy, and whether you're using a bell or a singing bowl, it's going to disperse that with the frequency.
Right.
Um, and then I think a very effective way to charge your aura is by basically bathing in the sun. That's a very effective way with trauma work. It's like a simple way to give back to yourself. To just sit out in the sun and visualize the sun rays basically charging you as a battery, and that will be basically your aura charging up. And that's and I even have a mantra now, or a little chant I do. I say, sun above me, charge my skin, energize me from within. Sun above me, charge my skin, energize me from within. And I say that over and over and over again. And it basically, I feel like, again, like a battery. I'm like powering up, and I feel so good. And I do that for like as long as I feel the need to, and then I do like my energy work of the day, and I feel like better. So I think that's a low key way of recharging yourself, as a
Hell yeah.
beginner.
I love that chant. That chant is like on point. I love it. And yeah, I agree. I think the sun is very, very helpful. And since you shared a chant, the last thing that I had in my notes was a chant that I wrote for this specifically. And it says, I am not what was done to me. I set myself free. I am beautiful, wonderful, and strong, and what was done to me was wrong. I release that which doesn't serve me. I set myself free. So that's the one I wrote for this. It's a little longer, so it's not as easy to like, you really have to like read it a few times and then be like, okay, now I got it. But we're going to be posting this live, so that if you want to be able to write down those chants later, you can watch this video again. Or if you were unable to be here during the actual live itself, you can visit it later. And we're also going to be putting this on YouTube, on our respective YouTube channels. So that's another way that you guys can watch this again if you would like. And I also wanted to say real quick before I forget, because I'm ADHD, after this, after a short potty break, I'm going to pop over to my YouTube, and I'm going to be doing a live guided meditation to help with healing from sexual trauma using shadow work. But
And
yeah.
that being said, if you guys are watching this on YouTube or on Instagram or whatever, feel free to comment down below your questions on the replay or on the YouTube video, so we can answer them. We know that there's a lot, this is a messy topic, and we want to give you guys as many resources as possible. I'm very certain that Killian will also, in the YouTube video, provide some resources for the specific trauma work that is approved by I forgot what their name is, but some resources that you guys feel that you guys can touch base on, as well as incorporate this for your own healing journeys.
Yes, I've got a ton of resources. But yeah, and like Natasha said, please, please, please ask questions. We love having our brains picked. We love being there for you, and with you communicating what you need to know or your questions, that enables us to better empower you. So please ask questions. So yeah.
I think the last note I want to say for healing with sexual trauma is that healing from this, again, is going to come in stages. You may have to come at this, like, you just find techniques that will help you release, empower yourself, and will promote or encourage you for your own healing journey. It may not be as swift or as quickly as you would like it to be, but there is an other side of this, and you don't have to attach what happened to you to your identity. There are ways, again, of promoting your own healing and stuff like that. So That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to hop off, Killian, because I'm going to go. But thank
Okay.
you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed me.
Thank you for being here. All right, so I think we're gonna end here. I totally was not able to wave to everybody who came. I'm so sorry I missed you. I'm not the best at multitasking when I'm doing these lives. But like I said, I'm gonna take a quick break, go to the bathroom, get myself something to eat, and then I will be on my YouTube channel doing a live guided meditation that will help you heal from sexual trauma with shadow work. So thank you for being here. We really, really, really appreciate you guys. We're going to be doing another talk on shadow work on a different aspect of shadow work next week at the same time. And we're going to be keeping up these Wednesday chats. So hope you guys will be joining us. My cat is about to come over here and knock something over, so I'm going to go for now. But thank you for being here. Talk to you guys again later. Hopefully I can figure out how to end this.